All right.
We're live.
And we're ready to make some cocktails.
We are already ready to make some cocktails.
Hopefully everybody else is as well.
I mean, it's a Sunday. It's 8 o'clock. I'm sure you have probably even already made some cocktails. Is what I'm guessing. Hi, everyone.
Nice.
Hey, welcome virtually to Reed's Distillery.
Yeah. Wish we could have you here in person, but you know what? We're pretty pumped that we can do this. Also craft up some pretty unique and different cocktails too at the same time. Before we do that, though, of course, we need to introduce ourselves. In case you don't know, I'm one of the Reed family members here. My name is Graham. There's more than just myself here. There's many of us in this Reed family. There's my brother here as well.
Hi, guys. My name is Calvin. I am another one of the Reeds. So it's essentially us and our sister Jacqueline and our father Martin as well. So that is the Reed's Distillery team. If you haven't had a chance to come down and check us out at the distillery or do a tour with one of us or anything like that, we are the Reeds, or in this case, the Reed brothers.
Hi, exactly. Yeah. That being said, of course, we do have a team that helped bring this to life.
And probably actually bring you your cocktails for many of you guys who are making use of our delivery services. I'm sure you guys have met some of our awesome drivers as well.
Yeah, exactly. So before we get into that, just some quick housekeeping things. If you need to chat with us, you can message in the live chat area. You do need to be signed in to a Google account, but we will see the message there and we're happy to respond and answer whatever questions come through. If you don't get the chance to message your questions there, you can always give us a call at the distillery because we literally are always here. So you can always just call us and we'll pick up the
message us on Instagram, shoot us an email, whatever you'd like. Drop on by the distillery and come and chat with us because, again, we are always here.
Yeah, exactly. So beyond that component here, some things you're going to want to make sure you have handy, because there's nothing worse than trying to make a drink and then you turn and you don't have it. You got to run into the other room or something like that. So first off, your kit. If you don't have your cocktail kit, well, it's too late to come and pick one up. But you can make do with some substitutes if you've got some stuff in the back of your bar that you want to try and pull out. But I'll introduce the kit that you all should mostly have. First off, it's going to have Reed's gin. It's going to then kind of take 2 or 3 main components to build out a range of different cocktails. Chambord being the primary flavoring component in a lot of these cocktails here, so you should have some Chambord.
For anyone who's never had a Chambord before or any of this, it's going to be sort of like a dark raspberry, a sweet liqueur is what we're going to be dealing with that.
Yeah, and I would encourage all of you to try the ingredient if you've never tried it before. It's just a great way to get to know what you're playing with. That being said, you know, a white vermouth is not my ideal thing to just try a little bit of.
You don't need to try your white vermouth.
You know, I mean, you know what? Maybe you do. Maybe you'll enjoy it, and then you'll know how you like your martinis. But it's always kind of a good way to go about it. The next component is your Cremant. This one here, it's lovely. It's nicely balanced. So we're going to be using that in one of the cocktails. And then we've got our lemon cocktail mix. Now, our lemon cocktail mix is actually freshly squeezed lemon juice, but we also put in some simple syrup. This helps to make your cocktail making process easy. Simple syrup is annoying, to put it lightly. When you're making a drink and all of a sudden you got to run and you got to mix a 50% water, 50% sugar to craft a cocktail, it can get in the way. And what we found was almost all the time that you have lime or lemon. So this one here is your lemon mix, and we're going to be using that. If you don't have this, of course, you can just squeeze some lemons, okay? That being said, we do also have some lemons included here. We're going to be using that for garnish in our cocktails. And a little bit further along in the garnish world, we have raspberries. Fresh raspberries are going to be used in 2 of the cocktails. One of them is going to be used in garnish form, and the other one is going to be used in the making of it as well. And then finally, we've got some rose petals because it is Valentine's Day.
Yeah. So those are all the components that are in the kits that you guys probably have in front of you, and that is great. There are some additional items that we are going to need for some of our cocktail making today. Some of those additional items are going to be necessary. Some of them are going to be recommended. Yeah. The necessary ones, glassware. You're going to need something to build those drinks into. We are going to have 3 different glasses for the 3 different drinks that we are going to go through and make with you guys today. What we're going to have is we're going to have a rocks glass. This is going to be for our gin Bramble, although we haven't introduced the cocktails yet. So we are going to use this guy on our gin Bramble. We've got this. It's kind of like a fancy decorative martini glass. So if we've got a martini glass, that'll go really well for our Chambord Martini. And then we're going to use a champagne flute as well for our French kiss, which is sort of a riff on kind of a French 75. So glassware is absolutely important. You don't, if all you have is one glass, that's fine. We can make do with that. You'll just have to drink really quickly as we work through all of the 3 of them. Some stuff that is highly recommended. We're gonna do
almost essential.
Almost essential. We're gonna do a cocktail shaker. 2 parts. Shake it up. You've seen Cocktail the movie.
You might have a different shaker, which is a 3-piece one, so that'll work as well. Not a problem.
Yeah, we'll make a couple of adjustments as we kind of walk through. We'll also be using a strainer as we drain for one of our cocktails, as we drain out from our shaker to kind of hold back all of that ice. Again, if you don't have this, you could almost use a knife, a spoon, hold it on back, that sort of thing.
Ways. I've used a thermos before. So if you have a thermos with a snap closed lid, you can shake in that, and then you can open that snap and pour, and it'll hold the ice back as well. So you can get creative. I believe in you. I think you've got all the ingredients you need.
This one is going to be important if you've got one. This is a jigger, which is going to be our liquid measure. It's going to help us measure all of our ingredients. This jigger that we have, do you have the same? Yeah. 25 mils on the one side, which is about an ounce or one shot, and then 50 mils on the other side. If you don't have one of these, that's okay. If you have a shot glass lying around, you can use one of those. Yeah. Really, you just need something that can measure sort of those small liquid measures.
Fortunately, most of our recipes here are going to be in kind of equal structured components. So it's 1 part this, 2 part that. That being said, there's a little bit of a variance there. But so if you don't have a measure that has 50 mil, 25 mil, what I would recommend is try to find something that does have a 2 ounce and a 1 ounce, or a shot glass, like Calvin was saying.
Yeah, and just do 2 shot glasses whenever it's a 2 ounce measure. And we'll be working with mils or milliliters, but we can also talk you guys through what that would be in ounces. If that's all you've got, that's no problem. Yeah. The martini, we are going to make them in our Yaris. Now, not everyone necessarily has a Yari kicking around at home. If you do, that is great. But we are going to use a Yari and a cocktail spoon to stir it. If you don't have these, don't worry too much. We can actually even do that sort of in a glassware as well.
You can also do it in your shaker too. So there's lots of ways to go about it. But you are going to want to make sure you have base level, some glassware, and something to make the drink in.
Couple more things as well. Now that we're starting to get to the garnish, we're going to be doing a peeler to help peel those lemons, a knife, and a cutting board as well to slice those up. So we should be all good.
And one of the most important ingredients. And so if you don't have it, run and go grab some ice. It is essential. You need ice because at the end of the day, a cocktail without ice is, well, there's a reason we use ice in cocktail making. So if you don't have any of those things, right now is a great time to go and grab those things. I'm going to take a brief second to introduce the cocktails we're going to be making, but don't worry, we'll also be talking about them while we make them. So if you have to run off and go grab that stuff, not a problem. Do not worry. But the first cocktail that we're going to be making, actually, before we do this, let's assume for those of you who've already gotten your ice, we should maybe think about the martini. So the first cocktail we're going to be making is the gin Bramble.
It's that last one on the list on this little instruction card that I'm sure you guys have as well.
The one after that is going to be the French Kiss. I'll take a further second to dive into them a little bit more. And then finally is going to be the Chambord Martini. The reason I jumped right to that Chambord Martini is that a martini, when properly made, is beautifully chilled. Almost every component of that martini should be beautifully chilled. Now, we don't have our gin in the freezer. We don't have our Chambord in the freezer. We're not worrying about that. But what I would recommend is if you have your martini glass already and you have ice, is to take your martini glass, put ice in it. We are not going to be using this for quite some time, but what we are doing is we are pre-chilling our glass. Now, if you live in a condo like I do, where my freezer capacity is fairly limited for ice, you know what? You don't need to use your ice for this. You can actually just take your martini glass and leave it in the freezer while we make the other 2 cocktails. So I'm just going to set this to the side now.
I'll do the same. And yeah, if you guys were here at the distillery and we were making you a martini, that's one of the first steps that we would do is we would put ice into whatever glass we're going to make this in so that the glass is already ice cold. So we're not going to lose any of that cold from the actual liquid when we make that martini. And another note, if you are just going to take your glasses and toss them into the freezer, you really just need 5 minutes, but the longer they're in there, like I almost take them right out of the dishwasher and put them straight into the freezer. So there's always fresh martini glasses to go. You may not be at that level yet, but if you're going to do that as well, also consider giving one of the glasses sort of a rinse in some water and throwing it in there, and it'll like crisp up and it'll get nice and icy as well.
Yeah. And if you're as careless as I am, sometimes wrapping it in a towel prevents you from breaking a glass in your freezer. Now, we've spent a lot of time on our martinis. Obviously, we like martinis. But one of my favorite cocktails, and it jumped out to me a couple weeks ago when we were demoing different recipes, is this gin Bramble. It is simple and refreshing. We're going to dive into it. The other one we're going to make after that is your French kiss. That's going to revolve around the Chambord. Then finally, like we were saying, that martini. So that gin Bramble, the ingredients you're going to need. And like we were saying in the very, very, very beginning, you want to make sure you have your ingredients before you start making the drink. There's nothing worse than being halfway through making a drink and then all of a sudden you got to run to the other room to go grab a strainer or something of the sort. So I'm going to put my ingredient that I don't need right now just off to the side, but I am going to keep the ingredients that I do need right here with me, which is going to be,
one, make sure you have your glass in front of you. That's just a super easy one. So when you're done, you know exactly where it's going. Nothing worse than shaking up a drink and being like, oh, now what? And having to run and go put it in glass. Yeah. So glass first, and we're going to use a rocks glass for this Bramble. So it's going to be a low guy like this.
So a rocks glass, if you don't have a nicely cut one, literally any glass that's going to hold this much volume will do. So that's your rocks glass there.
Yep. And yeah, it doesn't have to be like, it really could be any glass that's going to hold that much volume. It might look a little bit weird if you put this much liquid into sort of a pint glass or something. Yeah. But whatever you've got that is about that size should do fine. Again, we're not overly pretentious here. We just like to make awesome cocktails.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing, and I think the more you make cocktails at home, is you realize the little steps are what make it from a cocktail you just made to, wow, this feels like I'm at a bar or a restaurant. And right now, when that's not necessarily an easy option or an option at all, well, that's fantastic that we can do this at home. It's going to take a couple little steps here and there to elevate that cocktail.
Absolutely. So we are going to start off with this first one. And before we dive too far in, I think Graham's going to kind of lead us through it because, again, he loves this cocktail. I do too. It's delicious, but he has just been like obsessed about it over the last couple of weeks. But whenever you're building any cocktail, the thing to keep in mind is sort of this pyramid of flavors. And really what we're going to strive for is a balance between three major flavors in any cocktail. And those, I like to remember them with 3 S's. And what that's going to be is the spirit in the cocktail. In this case, it's gin. It almost always is for us. Yeah. So the S is going to be for your spirit. A second S is going to be for sweet, because you need a little bit of some sweetness in there. Yep. In a lot of our drinks tonight, we're going to be doing that Chambord, that dark raspberry sort of sweetness is going to come through. And then the sour or the bitter, which in this case is going to be some of that lemon juice or even some of that lemon garnish. And that's going to sort of come into play in the balance. So really it's the 3 S's, the sweet, sour, spirit. And what we're going to try to do is balance those as well as possible in order to make not just the cocktails we'll make tonight, but just in general.
Yeah. Whenever I'm making a drink, that's what I'm always thinking about is this balanced and what are my metrics? The 3 S's, I've never thought of it that way. That's actually really cool. I've always just got bitter, sour, okay, sweet, and spirit. No, very simple. 3 S's, make sure they're equally or close to equally represented. That being said, a gimlet, not an equally balanced cocktail, but it's fantastic. So let's dive into making this cocktail. Some helpful tips. We're going to be making this in our shaker. Now this shaker, a 2-piece shaker here, we're going to be closing it, but what we are going to do is not put our ice in yet. There's nothing worse than, well, first off, we're chatting like we are now, and then all of a sudden all our ice is melted, and it's melted, and now we're mixing our drink in there. It's not going to make a good drink. So I don't put my ice in this. If I'm at the bar and I've got 15 drinks that I'm trying to make, that's a nightmare. If I'm at my bar and I've got 5 drinks I'm trying to make, I'm gonna make them all, but I'm not gonna have ice in them just yet. So we're gonna do that, and we'll let you know when to put the ice in there. So for now, we're gonna be starting with the lowest cost ingredient first. This is a simple rule of thumb whenever you're making drinks. The reason being, at the end of the day, if you make a mistake crafting that cocktail, well, that way you didn't mess up with your most expensive ingredients. That being said, I've never seen somebody pour out a drink. It usually doesn't go to waste, but it is best to enjoy that premium spirit in its best capacity. So we're going to be starting with the lowest cost ingredient. And on this one, that's actually going to be your raspberries. So we are going to be taking about 4 or 5 raspberries and throwing them into our half shaker tin. So it's up to you how many you'd like. I'm going to be doing about 4 or 5. I'll leave you to do, I'm going to do 5 because I really like that kind of really berry flavor, but it's up to you.
And I'm going to do about the same. I'm going to throw 5 in there. A little quick note as to when you're selecting those raspberries, these ones are going to go into a shaker, so they're actually going to get shaken up. So if you've got a couple of raspberries that are looking a little more sad, maybe you got your kit delivered on Friday, it's been a couple of days. Fresh raspberries don't travel super well, but if you've got a couple that are a little bit more, maybe they're smushed, throw those in there because they're all going to come out the same. Yeah. So that's a good way to kind of go through. Whereas a couple of the other drinks, we're actually going to use the raspberries as a display garnish.
Exactly. So this is a good one. We're going to be shaking it up. So the next ingredient that we're going to be using on this one is our lemon juice. Now, like I was saying, this already has your simple syrup in it. So if you were just making lemon juice at home, I would encourage you to add a little simple syrup because otherwise this cocktail won't be too balanced. So you want to try and bring a little bit of that sweet tone into it as well.
Simple syrup, just a side note, I know Graham mentioned that it's kind of a pain, to have to make it at home, but it very much is a simple syrup. So if you are coming across cocktail recipes and you need to make a simple syrup, it's literally equal parts hot water and sugar. It'll just dissolve in that, and it's literally used just as a liquid sweetener. So it's not too hard for you guys to make yourselves, but we've already gone through all of that work and we've thrown it into our lemon juice already.
All right, so now we've got my measure here. Now I've got the 50 on the top side and the 25 ml on the bottom side, the small and the big. You might have something similar to this. It might be slightly different in terms of measurements, but we're gonna be using the big side and the small side in this cocktail. So just think about it that way. We are gonna be taking 50 mils of lemon juice. So the tall side, I'm gonna be pouring that right into the shaker that already has the raspberries.
50 mils is gonna be about 2 ounces.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have just a shot glass, it's gonna be 2 shot glasses.
And we've got the lemon juice. So now we've got a couple of our cheapest ingredients already in the shakers.
And the benefit here is if you mess this up, all you've lost here is some raspberries and some lemon juice. It's not a big mistake, okay? The next one is getting into the Chambord. Like I said, if you haven't had Chambord, I'd encourage just try a little bit on its own just to know what that flavor is like. You want to know those flavors so that when you try the drink, if you don't love it, you can craft it, change it based on the flavors that you've tried. So for this one, we don't need too much of that Chambord. We're actually going to be just looking at about 25 mils.
About 1 ounce or the small side of our jigger.
And when I'm flipping my measure upside down, I try to do that over top of my shaker so that if there's anything remaining in the top side, it doesn't pour all over, it gets right back into there. So now we've got the 25 mils. I'm going to be pouring into here. There we go. Okay, right to the brim. Nice. I can already smell that kind of robust berry tone, which, like I said, I love this cocktail. So I'm quite happy already. There we go. Awesome. Nice. Thank you. Thanks. There we go. Now, what we're going to do now is practice some flair bartending. We're going to throw bottles around.
Absolutely are not
going to do that. None of these bottles are good for that. This here is a round style bottle. Not great to throw around. And of course, our gin bottle, as you know, it's heavy. It's got some weight to it. We wanted to design that cocktail decanter style. There's some fun things to this one. If you're having a challenge getting into the bottle, a quick thing to take note on is you don't need to hack at it with a knife. We get pictures once in a while, people being like, I don't know how to get into this bottle. Don't worry. All you need to do, I hold it by the collar and I twist to crack. That's about it. It's really quite simple to do that. Yeah. Now, when it comes to the gin, we've chosen our signature gin. We do also have a citrus and a spiced, but for the cocktails we're making today, the citrus might have worked okay. The spice, I think, would have been a little bit too powerful. The signature is a cocktail spirit. It's designed to be balanced and not overpowering in one too many ways. So we are going to be doing a 50 ml pour of Reed's signature gin, roughly 2 ounces. Yeah, exactly. There we go. And right into the same side, no ice yet. You got it? All right. There's nothing like when these bottles fall because you know what? They don't break,
they do not.
But they make a heck of a sound, that's for sure. So now what we have is we've got all of our ingredients that we are going to need for this cocktail. What we don't have yet is our garnish. So before we do that, what I want to do with you, we'll cut our garnish so that all we're doing is boom, we create the cocktail and then we have the garnish already ready to go. So with that, this garnish is going to be lemon. So we want to bring a little bit more of that fresh tone though from the lemon, and we're just going to be doing what is called a full moon cut. Now, I don't know if that's actually what it's called. That's just what I call it. That's what I call it.
So, I mean, when he says it's a full moon cut, right? Like,
and if I said a half moon cut, you know what I mean, right? but I don't think people refer to it ever as a half moon. So either way, we're doing a full moon cut, which is going to look just like this, okay? Now, we don't need that just yet. We're almost there. Next step is going to be, we need some ice in our shakers. So if you've been waiting patiently, now's your time. You see, isn't it good we didn't have the ice in there? It'd be melted ice by now. We're gonna be putting the ice into the shaker. You want some more? Thank you. You want some more? I think that's good. So something to take note of here. This cocktail is gonna be what we call a dirty ice pour. So what is a dirty ice pour? Effectively, it is when you take the ice from your shaker and you don't strain it. You pour that right into your glass. It's a technique that makes the drink a lot more it brings all the flavors that are in here into your drink, and it's easy to do.
Bartenders love it. Yeah. Anytime it's a dirty pour, it's awesome because I don't need to strain anything out and add fresh ice. It's all just going in, so it's nice and simple.
And if you're limited with ice, this is a great style cocktail that you can make.
Sure.
All right, so we've got our ice, pouring it in here. Make sure you smack this closed. Woo! Because if you don't, this is gonna go everywhere, and it's raspberry and it's red.
And we have white linen.
Yeah, so exactly. All
and
right.
If you want to mute us for the next 15 or so seconds, that's how long we're going to shake for. We're both going to shake these on up. But if you guys want to shake with us
when your hands get unbearably cold, that's when it's good. All right. And then I do this and I see if it's cold. Yeah, you see, he thinks it's cold. All right, nice and unbearably cold. And then
usually as you guys are going to be shaking, it'll kind of be slanted more straight on one side and then more of a gap on the other. On the side that's sort of flush, you're going to take the palm of your hand, you're going to smack it against the side of your shaker, and then the top will come right off. Sometimes it can be a little bit sticky just because the cold has sort of made the metal contract, especially if you're using a metal shaker. And so being able to kind of jar it loose, just use the palm of your hand on that flat edge of your shaker.
Another thing, I just give it a good little wiggle like that. Sometimes that can help too. So now the dirty ice pour.
Dirty pour, so easy.
Just right into your rocks glass. And this is where with this cocktail, you might have to make it once or twice to get your fill levels correct. And that's also why you can see here, there's a discrepancy. I'm a little bit low, Calvin's a little bit higher, so maybe a little bit more ice, right?
Probably more ice.
Calvin would have more ice in his shaker, mine would be a little bit less. So another thing is, if I wanted to bring it right to the rim like that, I would just put a little bit more ice in there to bring up that level. Now, finally, with this one, that full moon cut of lemon, thank you. And I like to bring it to the end and just kind of give it a little bit on there, just like that. Nice
if you like that sort of like bitterness tone, like think of sort of your rimmer, you can do it along the outside so that it's going to meet your lips first. You're going to have that sort of like freshness from that citrus, and then just kind of tuck right down in. And we've made our first drink, you guys.
Yeah, so that's the gin Bramble. So cheers.
Hey.
And happy Valentine's Day.
Nice.
Happy
Valentine's Day, guys.
Mm-hmm. You see?
Yes. I know. I know.
I love this cocktail.
He does.
I don't know. I think this is now going to become a staple in my cocktail making. It's balanced, right? You can taste, ideally it's balanced. If you find it's a little bit too sour, you might want to bring a little bit more sweetness into it, but it should have your bitter tone, your sour tone, your sweet tone, and of course that spirit in there. It's a really simple one to make, and you can make a couple in a shaker as well, right? You can make 2 of them in your shaker and then do a little bit of a split pour like that. And that's actually what we're going to be doing for our next cocktail too. We're going to be doing what is called a split pour.
Before we dive into that, I will also mention sort of a little trick that we like to recommend as well. Cocktail lovers, they just want something a little bit more simple. So if this is too spirit forward for anyone, for any of your guests, for anyone that you're making with, that's no problem. Just make the cocktail customizable to you and to what you like or what your guests like or whatever it is. And the number one way that we can do that with a more spirit forward cocktail is by adding something to it. A tonic water, a club soda, a lemonade, a juice even, if you wanted to kind of like just help it become a little bit lower ABV. That's certainly an option. That's one of the things that I know I recommend with the Negroni. Again, a perfectly balanced cocktail, but maybe somebody doesn't like that spirit forward side of things. It's just a little bit too much bitter flavor in there. And that's fine. crack open a tonic water or a club soda isn't going to change that flavor too much, and it'll just sort of help dilute it, and it'll give it a little bit of bubbles as well, so some effervescence.
Exactly, and that's actually how I enjoy my Negronis in the summertime. I'll get a Negroni just as is, the classic balance, one part. But then I'll ask for a soda water on the side, and so I'll start enjoying it, and then I'll spritz it as I go. So that way, by the time I'm done that Negroni, I've actually got quite a refreshing spritz cocktail. So that's a great way, and you can certainly do that with this cocktail here. It's going to be full-bodied as is, and you can certainly lighten it and spritz that with a little bit of a sparkling soda or tonic.
Exactly. Or even a lemonade or anything like that. Absolutely feel free. The world is your oyster. We also have tons of different flavor tonics here if you wanted to sort of play around with what that, how that could change and open up. So the second drink that we're going to get into, Graham was just mentioning, is a French kiss. We're going to do this one a little bit differently, where we are going to make one cocktail and then split it in between our 2 glasses and then top it up with the bubbly. Yeah. You'll notice with pretty much any cocktail that uses bubbles, in this case we are using a Clement, that it's almost always used as the last step in building that cocktail. It's almost top up the glass with the bubbly. So you can create that cocktail, split it between 2 glasses, and if you really like that bubbly, or you don't want quite so much spirit, you can split the cocktail portion of it between 2 and then top up with bubbly, which is what we're going to do here today.
Exactly. And it's also helpful if maybe you're doing exactly like we're doing and we're making 3 drinks in a fairly short condensed period of time. It means that you're actually taking what is a full drink and just splitting it into 2. It's a great way if you don't want to also have a full size cocktail. It's a quick little way to split that. And it's really about the glassware that you choose. So we've chosen here a fairly standard style champagne flute, but you're more than welcome. I believe this is about 6 ounces here. You're more than welcome to get a little creative with this. We've got some champagne style glasses that really open up. They're going to hold almost 12 ounces. So that would be, the full cocktail in one. So it's really about the glassware you choose. If by chance you only have really large glasses, then maybe you just have to make 2. But that it's really about the choice on that one. When it comes to this cocktail, I think you were mentioning the kind of take on that French 75 cocktail. Very popular gin-based cocktail, light and refreshing. Really kind of one of my go-tos, especially in the summertime. Yeah. It's you can enjoy it on a patio. It's not going to be something that you necessarily realize how strong it is because it is primarily an alcohol-based cocktail.
Yeah, the original French 75, quick history lesson. Yeah. The original French 75 was a drink. So essentially it's going to be a lemon juice, it's going to be gin, and then topped up with bubbly. And it was called French 75 because it was actually named after a French cannon. And this cannon was particularly short and stubby and looked relatively non-threatening, but it would do a tremendous amount of damage. And so they named this cocktail the French 75, mostly because they thought it would, it's relatively unassuming. It's just a glass of bubbly. What could go wrong? But in that glass, you also have a serving of gin. Yeah. In our case, we've got a serving of Chambord. And so it is a much more impactful drink than the outward appearance would leave it to believe. And so now we have a French kiss, a bit of a twist on that French 75. We are using a Clement, which is a French bubbly. We are using our Chambord, which is a French, of course, raspberry liqueur. And we are, of course, naming it the French kiss. It's Valentine's Day.
Take on that. Yeah. So we are going to be using, in terms of tools, we are going to be using our shaker. Something to take note is we haven't cleaned our shaker. I'm not too fussed because, first off, we're using the same ingredients. So it's not going to drastically impact the flavor at all. If I was, of course, working at the bar, it would be a brand new shaker. But here we are. You might not have the time, or maybe, it's all the same ingredients. You might want to keep it as is. If I was making a martini, which I am doing in our stirring Yari, I would certainly clean it. There is no way I'd make a martini without this. But here I am making another drink for myself. I'm going to keep it in the same shaker. I'm going to be using the small side shaker when I'm pouring in the ingredients. And here's a little reason why. And I've learned this the hard way. If you try and pour your ingredients into the tall side, you will inevitably at some point go and reach and knock this over. So much harder to knock this one over. So it stays planted. This one I'm going to be bringing in at the end with the ice. So
I think everyone is starting to learn who the clumsy bartender is out of the two of us.
I get the drinks done, but I learn. You learn that lesson once. When you knock a whole drink over, you go, well, that was a big old waste. So we don't want that here today. So using the small side of your 2-piece shaker. Of course, if you have the 3-piece shaker, which is going to have a part that goes on top here and then a smaller part that you can remove and it holds the ice back, you would just make it in there. Okay. So before we get into adding the ingredients into our shaker, we are actually going to prepare our garnish on this. Sometimes you're going to do this just to make sure that once again, we don't have 5 cocktails in front of us, but if I did, I might do that as a cue to myself to know which cocktail's which. But also with this one, we're going to be pouring ingredients in. We want them to kind of react with those the garnish pieces in there. So the garnish for this cocktail is very simple. Really, 1 or 2 raspberries, and then a lot of those rosebuds, the beautifully compact rosebuds, they're going to open up in that cocktail.
So this is perfect and why we wanted to keep those really good looking raspberries, because they're going to sort of like float through this drink, which we really quite like. So this is where we use the display raspberries, the money raspberries. We'll throw a couple in there, and we're going to throw in some of these rosebuds that you guys have. Now, if you guys are making more than one of these cocktails, let's say you finish your first French kiss and you love it and you want another one. Normally, I would say, clean out your glass and then do it all fresh, get all fresh garnish and everything. But as much as possible, keep these rosebuds going, because the more that they can soak in, the more they're actually going to open up and bloom, which is really kind of cool and fun. And so save them and roll them into your next drink, because, you could maybe knock this back in 5 minutes. It's going to take a little bit longer than that for these rosebuds to start to actually open up. So definitely reuse the rosebuds, because they will only get more and more beautiful and release more and more oils.
Yeah, exactly. So now that we've got our glassware complete, we'll place them side by side, because like I was saying before, we're going to be doing a split pour on this. So we're going to be taking the 1 shaker and we are going to be dividing it into 2. Now, because we're brothers and we, teamwork makes the dream work, we are going to be crafting this cocktail together. I would never do this at a bar. I would never turn to the other bartender and be like, hey, do you want to try and make this together?
It's like one of those challenges where you're like, save the jacket and we have to.
You think we could try? No? Okay, not today.
Now is not the time.
Not right now. All right, perfect. But once again, right back to that rule of base ingredient first. What's my lowest cost ingredient? So when I look at the French kiss, you've got your gin, you've got your Chambord, you've got your lemon juice. We already know this. The lemon juice, 25 mils.
25 mils.
Oh, I thought you were going to pour it into mine.
No, you pass that over and then we'll.
There we go.
25 mils, cheapest ingredient first.
Yeah. And like we were saying, this already has that simple syrup. So once again, you're just using lemons. Make sure you put maybe 10 mils of simple syrup in there as well. Okay. The next one's going to be either the Chambord or the gin. Now, for me, Chambord is going to be that lower cost ingredient.
And we use half as much of the Chambord as we do the gin.
Exactly. So 25 mils, the small side of my measure. Alrighty. And I'm going to be pouring that. Like we were saying, these are not your ideal bartending bottles. They are little round.
These are intended to be on the home bar. They are intended
as beautiful showpieces. Yeah, exactly. All right. So we now have in our shaker, we've got our lemon Chambord. Next up and final step on this one is our gin. So once again, signature gin is going to let this cocktail be balanced. We've got a full 50 ml pour right there.
2 ounces.
Yep, exactly. So if you've got that shot glass, that's 2 shot glasses. All righty. If you've got like espresso glasses, that's 2 espresso glasses. That would be a very strong drink. So next up is we need some ice for this cocktail. So rather than putting the ice into where I have all the fluid, I put it into the one without. Main reason is I don't want this splashing everywhere. There we go. So we've got plenty of ice in here now. And here we've got our fluids. I'm going to pour that in. There we go. Smack it shut. I'm going to shake it for a little bit. I'm going to give it to Gavin. He's going to shake it for a little bit. Teamwork. There you go.
And if one of you guys is shaking and the other is sitting there watching your partner shake, maybe you could start to open up that bottle of bubbly, because that's what we're going to use next.
Yeah, exactly. All righty. I'll do the strain and pour. Perfect. There we go. Nice. Also, if you're doing this for Instagram, shaking cocktails is great for boomerang. Just something you learn with the distillery. So I'm going to be pouring. You'll see I have changed the orientation of the glasses to be sideways because pouring the other way is a bit of a headache. Calvin is going to top up with bubbly after I've poured. I'm going to try and split this as evenly as possible. When it comes to using one of these strainers, place it on the top and push it against. And that's all going to hold the springs here against the side and hold back the ice. So,
and again, if you don't have a strainer at this point, don't worry. You can just use a knife and sort of hold it up against the edge of that lip to hold back all of that ice.
And you'll see it's already got some color to it. That's going to be coming from the Chambord. I'm trying my hardest to make an even pour, but I'll be honest, I want a little bit more than him. Yeah. So I'm going to pour a little bit more into mine. If you want to get a little bit more, give it a little bit of a shake like that. And there you go. You're going to see there, that is an even-ish split with a little bit more to me. But that's kind of one cocktail split into two based purely on the glassware, okay?
Now, a note of caution. Maybe some of you are already a step ahead of this. A note of caution, go slow when adding your bubbles. I'm sure you all know adding bubbles into a champagne flute, they can get a little bit aggressive and almost overflow sometimes. That's going to be even more so when they're agitating with the rosebuds and the raspberries and the citrus as well. So almost kind of like, do splash and let it settle and go back and forth because it will fizz up a little bit more than usual.
There we go. Nice. So that there is going to be an even split on a French kiss. It's going to be balanced in its tone, but it's much lighter than what we've just had, right? Now, this is going to be one of my kind of favorite summertime style cocktails. It's beautiful. It's light. Makes me feel like it's summer right now.
And it's the best of both worlds because you get a cocktail and you get to pop open a bottle of bubbly, which always feels amazing.
Yeah. Any excuse.
Cheers, man.
Yep. Yeah. You see, we're very humble. We really enjoy what we do. I must say, before we dive into the last cocktail, because we're still letting our ice settle, I'm sure some of you guys are still trying to either catch up or maybe you're just still on the first drink and you're just taking a minute to enjoy it. Don't worry, this will be recorded. So afterwards, if you want to rewatch it, you can. That way you can continue to make these cocktails down the line. But it's one of those things that gin is, like we've said a couple times now, a cocktail spirit.
It's the original cocktail spirit. Gin was literally, when they were developing the first cocktails, gin is what they were using.
And it's got so much different flavor. For example, in our gin, we have 11 different botanicals. And when you think about that, first off, a lot of people ask, what is a botanical? To break it down and make it as simple as possible, a botanical is really just going to be an herb, a spice, a fruit or a fruit peel that you're going to use in your gin distillation. And so when you make your gin, you want to think about balance because your gin is going to be used for cocktail making, and ideally your cocktail is balanced as well. Now, one of the most beautifully balanced cocktails out there is a martini. It is an art, some would say. Most would say the perfect way to make a martini is you take your dry vermouth, you pour it into your martini glass, and you swirl it and pour it out.
Okay. A coating of dry vermouth.
Some people put it into a little spray bottle and spray the glass, okay? I don't do that. I will coat my martini, I'll pour it out. When I use our spice gin, I'll actually use a little bit more vermouth. It just is gonna bring a very unique flavor to your drink. So there's a lot of unwritten rules as to how you make a martini. James Bond had a theory, and I wouldn't say he's right.
He is wrong.
He is wrong, yeah. No, there's no right or wrong.
There isn't, except don't shake your martinis, have them stirred.
If you want.
Okay.
All right. So effectively, a martini is going to be a stirred cocktail. And the reason is that dilution plays a huge role in this cocktail. What we're going to be using for this is a stirring glass or a yari like this. If you don't have one of these, you can literally use a glass and a spoon. Not a problem. It's going to do exactly the same thing. If you want to get a little fancy, you got a yari, you got a stirring spoon, you're good to go.
This is almost a differentiator between two different kinds of cocktails. Essentially, anything that's going to be put into a shaker is going to be a lower ABV or alcohol by volume. So it's going to be a less spirit-forward cocktail because there is the more dilution. But on the cocktails where we care about preserving that ABV of keeping it a spirit-forward cocktail, we're going to use stirred. So that's your martinis. It's going to be your Negronis, anything like that.
All right. So when it comes to this cocktail, we've already got our glassware nicely chilled, right? And that was step one. At the very, very beginning of this process, we took our glassware and we chilled it. I can feel that glass. It's nicely chilled. I'm going to bring it a little closer to me because it's next up, but I'm going to keep that ice in there, continuing to chill the glass. The next step, first off, I'm going to clear away some stuff. We've got a lot going on here. I'm going to take away a little bit. But the next step is that we're going to be crafting a traditional style martini, but rather than a vermouth, we are actually going to be using Chambord. And so Chambord's going to bring that sweetness to it too. So if you want a little bit more of an approachable martini, something a bit softer, less spirit forward, I would encourage a little bit more Chambord. But if you're looking for something that mimics the beautiful balance of a classic martini, then I would say what we have here is 15 mils, which is about half your 25 mil. Or if you've got a tablespoon, it's a tablespoon. I've literally never seen a bartender use a tablespoon, but they should. It's a very accurate unit of measurement. So that's kind of the recommendation for a very classic balanced approach. The other thing that we are going to want for this cocktail is your peeler, as Calvin was mentioning. It's going to be useful for doing that peeled garnish at the very end. And then beyond that, we're going to need some more ice, okay? We don't need ice to be in our glass at the very end of it, but we do need ice to stir the cocktail.
Now, we mentioned before about how ice would be the last ingredient that we would add into our shakers. But for these, we're actually going to have ice be first and then pouring the alcohol over that ice so that it gets as cold as possible. But we are going to try to be a little bit quicker in how we make these and how we stir them, again, so that the dilution is minimized. If we were making these at the bar, we would even be using those massive king cubes of ice that you guys see, because those have even less dilution while trying to get that alcohol as cold as possible. So we are going to go a little bit quicker through this one so that we can reduce that that dilution. But we've got our ice in now.
Thank you.
No worries.
And it, like we were saying, it's about balance. This one here, it's balancing the dilution, right? If you are shaking this cocktail, it's going to really dilute it. It's going to be a lot softer and a lot less spirit forward. So that might actually be something that you want to do. But I would recommend any martini is a stirred martini. So now that we have that, we have our measure. We've got, once again, our 50 mil and 25 mil. We're going to be starting with the Chambord. And with that, I'm going to be doing 15 mil. That's not a unit of measure. I don't have it on here. I'm going to be eyeballing about half the small side, or half a shot glass if you've got a shot glass, or a quarter of a martini or a espresso glass. I don't know. All right.
Shot glass and espresso glass will probably be about the same.
I thought that, and then I made a Negroni with an espresso glass, and it was a very big Negroni. So I've learned an espresso glass is a little bit more.
I did a little bit more than 15 mils, but I'm going to have it nice and pink because it's Valentine.
There you go. There you go. So now I've got, actually, I did too.
Oh, nice. Twins. We are not.
We are not. No, he's older than me. It was his birthday the other day.
It was. Yeah. Graham got engaged last month. Happy Valentine's Day to you and your fiance, man. That's awesome.
I know. I told her that I was going to do a virtual cocktail class with her, and I don't think she realized she was going to be watching in the other room, but that's okay. I think, it's always nice to kind of share these moments virtually together, all together like this. So what Calvin's done here is 50 mils of gin,
2 ounces, 2 shot glasses.
All right.
And then as soon as that's in there, I'm not even going to wait for Graham. We're going to stir. Now, with this, if you happen to have a cocktail spoon and a Yari, we're going to do the back of the spoon against the wall of the actual thing, and we're going to roll it around like that. It almost rotates in your fingers, so you're not even holding on to it. It's sort of free-flowing.
Ideally, the quieter it is, the better. That means you're getting this beautiful rhythm to it. That being said, I don't often get it that way. I try, but this is a
clumsy bartender. So we're going to do this for about 15 to 20 seconds, getting it as cold as possible. The more you shake, if it's a shaker, the more you shake. And if it's this, the more you stir. the colder it's going to get, the better your drink is going to
The
taste.
more dilution. So now we are on to our next stage. If you are using the same strainer, this is where I would clean this piece. If it's not clean, don't worry. It's not worth it right now. But now
Ice out. So we put this in at the beginning of the session to keep that glass cold. Or if you have your ice or your glass in the freezer, pull it on out. Should be good to go. Nice and cold glass.
You know, just throw it around. There we go.
And we're just going to pour straight in.
All right.
And we're going to get what is a very beautiful pink martini.
Right.
We ended up with similar tone martinis, actually.
Nice.
Very close. Very
Nice.
close.
I put a little bit more Chambord in this one. It's going to bring a bit more sweetness, but it's not overpowering, which is nice, right?
Yeah.
But what really helps with that kind of balance between this is that you do need to bring that sour in. And we don't have it here yet. And we get that from our garnish.
Just a hint of.
Yeah. So when it comes to doing garnish, you can get very creative. What we are going to show here is the base form of doing it's not a twist, but doing a lemon garnish for a martini. You're going to be taking your peeler, potato peeler, whatever type of peeler you have. If you don't have a peeler, you can use a knife. Please be careful. And you're going to pull back and then hold your thumb on it. So I pull from the very top. I want to get as long a piece as possible. And I try and go deep because I really do want to get as much of that as possible. And I can see sometimes I'll do it over the drink as well. That's going to bring the oils onto my drink already. I haven't even spritzed it yet or used the lemon. I can already smell the lemon though, which is beautiful. But I'm going to want to wait, and then Calvin will get this. If you've ever seen on some cocktails, you're going to see people using orange, and they're actually going to have a match and use the fire. That's the oils effectively catching flame. So it's quite a fun one. We're not going to be doing that here today.
So we want those oils in there. So we are going to peel it over the drink. So all of those extra oils that get released are poured over. We're then going to take our little slice of lemon peel,
Yep.
and we're going to do something called break the back, which is it naturally curves in this way. We're going to try to bend it the other way.
Bend it the counter way. And you want to do this around the drink.
You want to do it
That's gonna
ideally
release the
on
oils.
top of or on the side, but squeeze it on in so it will release it. And then we're going to do what we did before, or what I did before with that lemon, which is I'm going to go all the way on the outside just to kind of coat it a little bit. And this is going to give us that sour note that we need to help balance out the sweetness and the spirit.
You should already be smelling that. Like, to me, I'm like, this is just calling my name, because you can smell that beautiful balance of that citrus, a little bit of that sweetness. I like to try and balance it on the rim as well. It's a 50-50.
You can also take that, cut a slit right through the middle of that lemon peel, and then press it onto the rim, and so it'll stay nice on your rim.
Curl back up like a smile.
I just kind of like dip mine in. You do yours on the side.
And this here is your Chambord Martini.
There we go.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
And cheers, you guys.
Cheers. Wonderful.
Yup.
That might be the best Chambord Martini I've ever made.
That's really good.
I mean, we only really started making this cocktail not too long ago, but it is.
No, you've already got your Bramble. I'm taking the martini.
Yeah, you know what? I must say the beautiful thing about each one of these cocktails is they're simple to make, and you can kind of tweak them a little bit, play a little bit more sweet, play a little bit more sour. And the ingredients aren't that hard to find. That being said, Chambord can be a bit challenging, but it is something that we wanted to make sure that you guys also learn through the process. So hopefully you learned something here today. If you knew everything, thank you for hanging out with us. We appreciate that. If you already knew all these tricks and stuff, but otherwise, hopefully you learned some stuff. It's something that whenever we get to talk about gin and cocktail making, I think we both light up. Like, we love doing this. So
this is genuinely the best part of our job, is being able to kind of like
100%.
talk to people about stuff that we love. Like, these are the highlights of our days. So thank you so much for tuning in and for letting us be a part of your Valentine's Day.
100%.
Feels a little bit intrusive, but we are so glad that you guys welcomed us into your homes while you got to make these awesome cocktails. And hopefully you guys are enjoying these drinks as much as we are.
Yeah. And thank you for the continued support. It truly means the world. Right now, for all the local businesses, we really appreciate it. I think for us, having the opportunity to also get creative with some of these things is really exciting. So thank you so much, guys. Cheers and enjoy.
Cheers, guys. Happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, damn, that's good. I like that.